a scarred man crossed the wasteland. Behind him, the wilds. Ahead, the walls and a reckoning 10 years late. A guard on the wall froze, then shouted, "It's him, the deserter." The name raced through the garrison. 3 officers halted, their old scars burning. 10 years ago, a young soldier broke, he screamed, "Forgive me," and fled as his squad was devoured. Titans swarmed the expedition. Through the carnage, his silhouette shrank into the smoke, the shape of a traitor. 3 survivors, bleeding, watched him disappear. That image rooted deep, not a comrade, but a curse.
He left us.
Now, a decade later, the gate opened. A man in travel-worn clothes stood in the yard, unarmed, eyes hollow but meeting their stare.
You bastard! You actually came back.
10 years of hate. And my hand still trembles.
Hiro didn't wait. His fist drove into the deserter's jaw with a sickening crack. Kazuya crumpled, blood welling from split skin. He didn't raise a hand, didn't even flinch.
10 years I've dreamed of this. 10 years of seeing your face run.
Kazuya lifted his head, voice steady despite the blood. "I am here. Do it," he said.
That's it. After a decade of hiding, that's all you bring.
Rin stepped in before the next blow could fall, his grip like a vice on Hiro's shoulder.
I said enough. He dies when I have answers, not a moment before.
Answers. He's a coward and a liar. What could he possibly say?
Sora's hand hovered near her blade. She hadn't drawn it, but she hadn't sheathed it either.
Take him to the west cell. No one enters until I give the order.
Guards shoved Kazuya into the stone cell. Moments later, the 3 officers filed in, the door slamming shut behind them.
You've got 1 minute. Then I am finishing what I started.
Kazuya leaned against the wall, blood still wet on his chin, watching them like a man who had already died.
You heard him. Speak. Why return to the walls you abandoned?
10 years earlier, the 39th expedition, Titans breached the formation. The squad was cut off, hopeless. Amidst the screams, a single figure broke away, running not to rally, but to flee.
The moment we saw your back, we knew. The great Kazuya, hero, just a coward.
I didn't come to beg for my life. I came because I have something you need to hear before you swing that blade.
Sora's fingers tightened on the knife hilt, his tone. It wasn't fear, it was resignation.
What? What do you mean? What could you possibly have to say?
Hiro slammed Kazuya against the stone, then ripped open his coat. A leather-bound journal tumbled out.
What's this? Your last will?
He kicked it aside like refuse. Ren knelt, and his fingers closed around the battered cover. Ren flipped it open. His eyes landed on a diagram, the 39th expedition route, marked with corrections in a shaky hand.
This route. It's wrong. Command's report never showed these positions.
Lies. He drew it himself to confuse us.
Sora stepped closer, her hand leaving the knife. She leaned over Ren's shoulder and her face went pale.
I know this handwriting. It's from the field logs. The ones Command claimed were destroyed.
Where did you get this?
Hiro snarled but didn't dare lunge. Ren tucked the journal away, his gaze pinning Kazuya to the spot.
I asked you a question. Where did you get this journal?
Kazuya's jaw tightened. Then he spoke as though pulling each word from a wound.
I found it in the wilds. It belonged to a soldier who died out there. It's real. I have nothing else to say.
Sora snatched the journal from Ren's hand, her voice a broken whisper.
This name. It's Lieutenant Inoue. My cousin. He was like a brother. Command said he was Kia with no remains, but this is his handwriting. He wrote this.
It's a forgery. He copied it to manipulate you, Sora.
Sora ignored him, turning to Ren, her eyes wet but sharp.
Read it aloud. I need to hear every word he left behind.
You can't be serious. We can't trust anything he brought.
Ren silenced Hiro with a look, then opened the journal. The cell fell quiet as he began to read.
Entry 4. Route deviation forced by command. Lost 3 more men. The handwriting grows jagged here. He continues, sighted flares on the ridge. Command observers. They pulled back contact. We are alone. Final line. They meant this. We were never supposed to return. This was an experiment.
Sora's knees buckled. A decade of grief twisted into a new, incomprehensible shape.
My cousin knew. He died knowing they used us as bait.
Numb. No. The brass wouldn't do that. It's still a lie. It has to be.
Enough. This journal stays with me. Kazuya remains confined. No execution until I verify every word.
Kazuya lifted his head, blood drying on his chin, and spoke with a voice like gravel.
There's more. Not just the journal. Evidence I gathered for 10 years.
The cell door clanged shut. The 3 officers stood in the corridor, their certainties in splinters. 2 days later, Ren entered the cell alone. Kazuya hadn't moved.
You said there was more. I am listening.
Kazuya's voice was raw, as if the words had been gnawing at him for years.
I didn't just run. I saw them on the ridge, officers watching. I knew then it was a trap.
He reached inside his torn coat and pulled out a blood-crusted dog tag, offering it to Ren.
Sergeant Takeda. His body is still out there. He collected this before they silenced him.
Ren's hand trembled as he read the name. It belonged to a man he'd respected, a soldier whose death was never explained.
10 years. And you've carried this alone?
I spent a decade gathering evidence. The journal, the tags, the truth. I came back because it was time.
The complicit silence of command, the casual sacrifice of men. Ren's composure finally cracked. Ren summoned Sora and Hiro to a private office. He placed the blood-crusted dog tag on the table between them.
Sergeant Takeda's tag. Kazuya claims he found it on the battlefield. He says officers watched us die.
He's lying. That coward is stalling, spinning stories to save his miserable life.
Let me see it.
Sora lifted the tag. Her fingers traced the engraved name, and then she let out a choked breath.
I knew Sergeant Takeda. He was a good soldier. Command said he went missing in action. No further details. This tag is real. All these years, I blamed only him. But the reports we trusted, were they all lies?
Don't be naive. Even if the tag is real, that doesn't prove anything. He could have robbed it from a corpse.
We need more proof. I am ordering a discreet investigation. We'll keep Kazuya alive until then.
Hiro stormed out, slamming the door. Sora remained, her hand still clutching the tag. Her hatred now bleeding into a new agony. That night, Sora went to the west cell alone. The door scraped open and Kazuya looked up from the shadows.
I need more than evidence, Kazuya. I need the truth, all of it. What happened to you out there?
For the first time, his mask cracked. He described starvation, Titan attacks, and the guilt that never let him sleep.
I never forgave myself. I don't expect it. But I had to come back. I had to make you see what they did.
Sora's hand trembled, not from anger, but from the collapsing walls of a decade-long hatred.
I won't let them execute you, but I can't promise forgiveness. Not yet. Not after all this.
She pulled a folded report from her coat, the official expedition document, covered in her own red ink annotations.
I've been chasing ghosts in these reports. The inconsistencies are everywhere. Help me find the truth.
Kazuya took the report, his scarred hands steady for once, traced her red marks as if reading a map home. She left without another word. In the silence, The weight of possible redemption settled over the cold cell. Days of cross-referencing logs and journals. The name surfaced. General Kaganuma. His signature was on every sealed order.
He was the operation commander. The report we trusted for 10 years, he wrote it.
They found Hiro in the barracks, reeking of drink, a broken bottle beside him.
You can hate Kazuya and still fight the real enemy. Kaganuma murdered our squad.
You don't understand. That hatred was the only thing keeping me standing.
Hiro punched the wall. When he turned, his rage was no longer aimed at one man.
Then use me. Point me at the ones who deserve it. I won't promise to forgive him.
We don't need forgiveness. We need the truth. And we need you standing with us.
Ren extended his hand, not in friendship, but in a pact. After a long pause, Hiro took it. That night, the four gathered in the cell, allies forged in hate, bound by a common purpose. Ren spread the evidence across the table: journal, tags, annotated reports. A single formal complaint took shape through the night.
We'll request an emergency council session. Kazuya, you'll be our witness. Your testimony is the cornerstone.
Kaganuma will try to silence us. We must move fast before he realizes what we've uncovered.
I'll testify. I know what it means. My life is already forfeit.
If the council finds you guilty of desertion, you'll hang. There's no pardon for what you did.
I came back for this. If my death is the price for the truth, then I'll pay it.
Don't think this makes you a hero. You are just finally doing something right.
Ren sealed the complaint and handed it to a trusted courier. The council would convene at dawn. Kazuya was escorted back to his cell, not as a prisoner, but as a man awaiting his final trial. The survivors watched him go. Nothing was certain except that by this time tomorrow, everything would be different. At dawn, the military council convened in the Great Hall. General Kaganuma sat among the high-ranking officers, his expression carefully composed.
I bring before this council evidence of a heinous crime, the deliberate sacrifice of an entire expedition squad. This journal, written by Sergeant Takeda, proves the 39th expedition was a trap, ordered by one of our own.
Then a hush. A scarred man in civilian clothes was led before the assembly. Kazuya, the deserter.
10 years ago, I ran. But before that, I saw officers watching from the ridge. They left us to die. In my panic, I fled. But my flight drew the Titans away. That act of cowardice saved the 3 survivors behind me.
A ripple of shock passed through Ren, Sora, and Hiro. For a decade, they had cursed the man who inadvertently saved them.
All this hate for the man who became a decoy we never knew.
Enough. The ravings of a traitor hold no weight. This is a pathetic attempt to escape the gallows.
The council erupted into chaos, but Ren, Sora, and Hiro stood like stone, their gazes fixed on the general.
You call him a traitor. But what about the traitor who sent us to die? I lay down my commander's pin. I'll stake my career on a full investigation of General Kaganuma.
I stand with the evidence. I stand with the truth. Arrest that man.
A murmur swept through the ranks. The general's allies glanced at each other, their certainty crumbling.
You would take the word of a deserter over a decorated general. This is insubordination.
A senior general rose slowly. The room fell silent. The evidence stands. Kaganuma, you are relieved of command pending full inquiry. Guards seized Kaganuma's arms. His protests died in his throat as he was dragged from the chamber. Ren and Hiro stood rigid. Sora's hand trembled as she retrieved her pin, the weight of the moment pressing down. Kazuya was let out separately, not to freedom, but to another cell. His fate remained a shadow over the victory. The council chamber emptied. The truth was out, but the cost was far from settled. 3 days later, the formal inquiry concluded. The 39th expedition had been a deliberate experiment in Titan herding. a sacrifice authored by Kaganuma. Ren, Hiro, and Sora were publicly commended for their courage in exposing the truth. Medals pinned to chests that still felt hollow.
And Kazuya, he remains a deserter. But the council offers a commuted sentence, penal service on the front lines.
In his cell, Kazuya listened to the envoy. His scarred face did not change.
I accept. The wilds are where I belong. I'll serve until my guilt runs out, or my blood does.
Sora stood by the window, her hand pressed against the cold glass. The victory felt like ash.
He's still breathing, but I can't even call this justice. It's just something less than murder.
He'll fight titans with no gear and a patchwork squad. The council gave him a death sentence dressed as mercy.
The day of departure arrived. Kazuya, in worn-out gear, was given a rusty blade and a squad of condemned men. He didn't look back. But the weight of 3 pairs of eyes followed him into the mist. A voice cut through the mist before the gate closed. Kazuya. It was Hiro stepping down from the wall.
I still hate you, but I know now you are not the only one who should be hated.
Sora pushed a folded paper into Kazuya's hand. A letter of safe passage, bearing all 3 signatures.
This doesn't mean we forgive you. It means you are not forgotten out there.
When you come back, if you come back, report to me. That's an order.
Kazuya tucked the letter inside his coat, next to a heart that hadn't felt warmth in a decade.
Understood. I'll carry this.
He walked through the gate. This time, no one called him back. The mist swallowed him. Sora's hand tightened around the empty space where his letter had been. They stood in silence until the sound of the rusted blade scraping stone faded into nothing. Months passed. Kazuya bled on the frontier, fighting shoulder to shoulder with the condemned. He moved like a man who had nothing left to lose, which made him invaluable. The guilt did not ease, but it found a function.
Every titan I kill is one less reason to hate myself. It's not enough, but it's something.
Then a courier appeared, a piece of paper in hand. The garrison insignia caught the evening light. He read it in silence, Sora's handwriting. The letter spoke of a new expedition and a request for a scout. We're retaking the eastern sector. The terrain is yours. Ren approved the request. If you're still alive, meet us at the forward post.
They want a guide, not a friend. That's fair. That's more than I deserve.
His scarred hands folded the paper with a steadiness that surprised him. The old tremor was gone. He tucked the letter into his coat, next to the old one. Then he picked up his gear. The wilds waited, but this time he had a direction. Not absolution, just a reason to keep walking. Days later, a lone figure approached the forward post. The sentries stiffened, then recognized the worn coat and rusted blade.
You are late.
Sora glanced up from the map, her eyes unreadable. Then she gave a single nod and looked away.
Scout the eastern ridge. You know those paths better than anyone.
Just work. No need for speeches.
No formation was called. Yet, as they moved out, the 4 fell into a pattern long dead but never forgotten. Kazuya took point. Hiro covered the left flank. Sora and Ren moved in the center. Quiet, efficient, the rusted blade and the commander's pin moved in unison. For a heartbeat, the past didn't hurt. Twilight bled across the wasteland, and the 4 silhouettes stretched toward the eastern darkness. Not friends, not healed, but a squad again. That was enough to keep walking. He never forgave himself, not once, not even when the truth cleared a sliver of light. None of them forgot the sound of his retreating footsteps, or the taste of the betrayal. But the truth, once told, became a bridge too narrow for hate to cross alone. It forced them to see that the enemy wore medals, not just a coward's coat. And so they walked. Not toward forgiveness, but toward a shared purpose. The rusted blade and the commander's pin, they clinked together now, not as symbols of rank, but as weights of the same injustice. Kazuya still carried guilt like an extra shadow. The survivors still carried scars, but the path ahead was clearer than the one behind. Not because the monsters were gone, but because the monsters were named. Twilight burned low, and the four silhouettes stretched toward the east. They walked, and that was enough. The eastern sector was reclaimed. Official reports called it a triumph of strategy. They never mentioned the scout who knew the terrain like a second skin. Kagenuma's trial was swift, his name struck from every memorial. The survivors watched from the front row, faces carved from stone. Kazuya never sought vindication. He continued to serve. Still a deserter on paper, still a ghost in the records. The guilt never vanished, but it settled like an old wound that ached less when he moved. Years passed. The 39th expedition became a cautionary tale, taught to new cadets, not of cowardice, but of the rot that wears medals. Kazuya's name was never spoken, but the survivors ensured his acts were not lost. The decoy, the evidence, the return. One evening, an old man with salt-streaked hair sat on the wall, watching the gate he once walked through. A younger soldier approached, hesitant. "Sir, were you really there? The 39th? Kazuya looked at the horizon and said nothing. The question hung in the air. And after a long pause, Kazuya simply nodded once. The young soldier saluted, not to a hero, but to a truth that took a lifetime to tell. The young soldier departed, his salute still hanging in the air. Kazuya remained on the wall, a lone figure against the vast sky. His hand drifted to his coat, where 2 worn letters rested, a decade of separation folded beside a plea for a scout. He stood, bones aching, the weight of years pressing down, but today it felt lighter. He looked out over the wasteland one last time. The Titans were fewer now. The future a little less monstrous. A memory surfaced, not of fleeing in terror, but of a desperate sprint that drew the creatures away, giving others a chance. A tear traced the wrinkles on his cheek. He hadn't cried in 20 years.
Forgive me. The words were for the dead. But finally, the dead did not answer with silence.
He turned away from the wall and walked back into the city. Not a hero, not a traitor, just a man who had finally returned. The records would never clear his name, but the truth had carved a small, stubborn notch in the wall of silence. And on quiet evenings, if you listen at the old gate, you can still hear the echo of rusty blades and the promise of a squad that walked together one final time. The gate stood through decades of wind and rust, a silent monument to all who had passed beneath its arch. In a quiet garden within the walls, 3 graying officers sat on a bench, their uniforms retired, but their spines still straight.
You know, I still hate him, but I miss the sound of that rusty blade.
The letters are still safe. I left them in the archive with the redacted reports, a footnote that won't be erased.
The new cadets will read about the 39th and never know his name, but they'll know a coward can sometimes be a shield.
They sat in silence as the sun dipped, the shadows of the 3 stretching long across the grass. A 4th shadow, fainter, seemed to flicker beside them, a trick of the light, or a memory too stubborn to fade. Beyond the wall, new recruits drilled in the yard, their shouts rising like an echo of a past that would not be forgotten. The lesson of the 39th was never spoken aloud, but it lived in every formation that refused to leave a soldier behind. And somewhere, on a forgotten stretch of frontier, the wind still carried the sound of 4 sets of footsteps, walking together, one step at a time. The old gate, now tangled with morning glory, stood open in peacetime. No more Titans, no more desperate charges. In the garden, Ren, Hiro, and Sora sat in silence, watching the sun rise over the wall.
That idiot. He's probably still scouting out there.
He always did say the wilds were his home.
The footnotes are enough. The truth doesn't need a name.
On a quiet hill beyond the wall, a simple stone marker rested. No names, no rank. Just 2 words carved deep. He returned. Beneath a small rock, 2 worn letters lay together. The paper yellowed, but the ink still dark. The recruits sometimes asked about the deserter's story. The veterans never answered with words. They pointed to the wall, to the gate, to the silence where a coward's footsteps had once turned to save them. And in that silence, the wind still sounded like 4 sets of boots, walking shoulder to shoulder, never quite fading.